Hi there, it's Ian here, and you're watching Grumpy Opinions, the show where I'm going to tell you all about what I think of films, TV shows, games, and life in general. Let's get on with the show. Last week's episode of His Dark Materials ended with a total cliffhanger, because Lyra was getting kidnapped by shadowy figures after she ran away from Mrs. Coulter and her pal, like the Badchurch Man. And just remember folks, you can follow me on Twitter at Grumpy Opinions. But for now, let's kick off with episode 3, The Spies. And that episode starts with Lyra having very clearly been gobbled. She's in a net and in the back of a van, and she's clearly been taken somewhere not great. But as the van stops, the Gobblers get attacked by different folk, and when they open the door, it turns out that it's Big Brother Tony Costa. Phew. Meanwhile, back in Jordan, angry Mrs. C has troops in, and she's totally wrecking the joint. She's making all sorts of bad, looking for heresies and things. And also Lyra and the alethiometer, because she knows about that somehow. And they end up finding an alethio instruction manual. But the master points out that it's totally useless because they don't actually have one, and the reason they don't have one is because Lyra has it, and Mrs. C lost Lyra. Womp womp. And Badchurch Man isn't impressed either, even less so when he gets told off by Magisterium types, because apparently going into college was way too loud and too public, and people are know about it now. And so the Magisterium's going to take matters to their own hand and sort things out with their own Bible cops or something. And that ends up getting Badchurch cross, so he goes back to our world, and he finds that his car's been clamped because it's really not his week. Typical. But then he still manages to meet up with his contact, and the guy's found out that Gruman isn't actually Gruman at all. He's a guy from our world, the real world, and he's an ex-soldier, and apparently he's the guy off Fleabag who plays the priest, and Moriarty off Sherlock. Well, there you go. So anyway, Badchurch gets another guy to go and spy on Major Moriarty's family. Meanwhile, Lyra's now stuck with the Gyptians, and they're all you're really special, but we can't tell you why, and she gets really annoyed, much like the audience. And she tells them that she knows that Lord Asriel's her dad, and they're oh, you know that? Oh, well, we're still not going to tell you anything. So she kind of just hangs around and footers around with the alethiometer a bit, and she chats to Mac Costa, and Mac Costa shows her how to do flashbangs with flour and fire, which I'm sure won't be important later. And anyway, she hangs out with old Father Coram, and he chats to her about how demons change, and it's interesting, but it's kind of a bit vague. And then he shows the Gobbler getting tortured, and she's full Sansa Stark about all of it. And they don't get a lot of information from the guy, but they do find out that the kids are all getting sent up north to the Arctic. And then out of nowhere, Bible cops show up and they start casing the place. And even though that's against the law, and the Egyptian king isn't happy about it, not at all, but they do it anyway. But they don't find anything, and Lyra's this is total nonsense, and goes off on her own, only for Mac Costa to drop a massive truth bomb that... She's your mother, Lyra! Shocking. I know, I didn't see that coming at all. Anyway, turns out that Mrs. Coulter had an affair with Lord Asriel, and then there was a duel, and he shot her husband, and frankly it's all a bit cheesy gothic drama. And anyway, yeah, so it totally suits Mrs. C, who's moping around in her flat now, getting sloshed and larking about in the balcony, and she sends away black magic evil juju bug monsters. Anyway, the Gyptians have a big town meeting about whether to go north or not, and it goes on for quite a while. And anyway, later, Tony Costa, and his mate, Torture Man, they go on a secret mission to rob Mrs. Coulter, and they get a couple of bits of paper, but then they're scared off by her monkey, which sounds a bit like a euphemism. And then she comes out guns blazing and shoots Torture Man, and then she gets all kinds of slap happy with him, which sounds a bit oh Christ, Ian, stop it, this is a kid's show. Anyway, Tony escapes, and in a moment of absolute something, Torture Man throws himself down the lift shaft rather than fight for his life, because clearly he's a total massive. Anyway, while this is happening, Lyra manages to make the alethiometer tell her that Torture Man died, and she goes to Father Coram and he doesn't believe her. But then the bad juju bugs attack, and they get one but not the other, and it flies off. And then Tony arrives back, and they realise that she can actually read the future. Ooh, so it's off to the north right now, right the hell now. So what did I think? Well, right off the bat, this episode had an awful lot going on, a lot to do. It needed to set up the Gyptians as a faction with their own ideas, and friendly but not toothless, but also needed to deepen the mysteries of Lyra, and at the same time tying up that predictable plot point of Mrs. Coulter being Lyra's mum. And sure, I know I've read the book and I've seen the films and that, but if you didn't click last week with all the moments of them doing similar things and all the sad looks that Mrs. C kept giving Lyra, have you even seen a telly show? Have you done a book at any point? Stories, right? That's how they work. Anyway, now that that's out of the way, and we've established without doubt that not only is she the head of the Gobblers, the whole episode went straight in on her being a total absolute git, right from the off, playing at the idea about how the Magisterium pretends to keep the peace, but essentially it is a tyrannical regime that keeps everyone in check. It's not that far away from being Gilead in Handmaid's Tale, or V for Vendetta's London. But subtle enough that also it begs a lot of unanswered questions. And it was good to see some proper info about the world and the other worlds, and about adult demons versus kids demon, how they settle like into one form is kind of an unspoken mystery, which seems a little bit odd. You think, but it is a bit strange in its fantasy universe. And we also found out a bit about Gruman, who was like Major Moriarty, and his family. And it's been a wee while since I actually read the books, but I'm sure that only actually came into the second book, in book 2, The Subtle Knife. So, I mean, they're probably plundering the storyline to fill out and expand on that one so that it's not everything suddenly out of nowhere. I mean, it's not a bad idea. I mean, it's a bit like they did that in the Hunger Games. They took the stuff that we only actually found out about in book 2, and they showed it happening while Katniss was still in the games, because in the original book, you never saw anything that she didn't see in the games. And I kind of like them doing that in his Dark Materials. I mean, it's helpful. It means an awful lot of the cross-world stuff's going to be set up in this first series, rather than just dumping a whole load of stuff into season 2. But I mean, I'll save that discussion until something concrete happens, like that it definitely is like a big thing, or until season 2 starts. Other than that, this week was kind of okay. I mean, it wasn't anything amazing. It wasn't a great episode, and we kind of need to talk about why. Okay, so first we need to actually talk about Doctor Who. No, really, we need to talk about Doctor Who. And I don't mean like modern Jodie Whittaker or Peter Capaldi or even like Christopher Eccleston Doctor Who. I mean, not really. I mean, honest to goodness, cardboard sets and man in suits monster era Doctor Who, when you could always rely on the BBC to absolutely bring everything down to a really fun but half-hearted level of production. And there was always like a point in any BBC TV show where like the Doctor Who factor would rear its head. And it's happened in pretty much every show they ever do. And this week was definitely that week. I mean, there were so many little things in this that were just strange or out of nowhere or just a bit sloppy. I mean, the wheel clamping scene, I mean, that was funny, but 5 minutes later he's driving his car again. I mean, what was the point of that daft little moment? That should be something that actually completely stymies a guy from a completely different world who doesn't know, like, the systems of how he gets in place and gets his car declamped or anything like that. And also, there's like laws going on all the time, but nobody actually cares. Why have laws if nobody's going to actually follow them or even think about them? I mean, we hear on 2 separate occasions that these laws are being flouted, first by Mrs. C's gang, and then by the Magisterium cops, or deacons, or Grammaton clerics, or whatever they are. Oh, I wish they were Grammaton clerics. Honestly, that would make this amazing. You should watch Equilibrium, by the way. It's a great, really fun, silly B movie. Check it out. Anyway, there was all that, but then there was also like a lot of boring scenes. And some of that was down to Daphne Keane maybe not quite nailing the emotionally stuff. I mean, I'm not really trying to be unkind. Again, she's a young actor, and sometimes, they just can't quite bring that kind of side of stuff. Maybe this is a side of the acting thing she's not amazing at. Maybe she's just never in her life been kind of betrayed and hurt in the way to this extent to make it seem plausible. It comes across as a wee bit just half-hearted. I mean, that could well be a directorial problem. I mean, maybe she's not getting like the support, or maybe she's not getting the direction she needs. But I feel like the ball was dropped here again, and it always seems to be in these emotive kind of scenes that are to do with like heartbreak and stuff. There was also a lot of like really weird ADR stuff this week, and ADR is like additional dialogue recording, I think, and it basically means they've redubbed a scene later down the line because they wanted to change what was said in the scene, or maybe it was a bit scratchy because a plane flew over and you couldn't hear what they were saying or something. But yeah, there was this whole bit where this guy, one of the Gyptians, gives like this whole big scene and like a big long talk, and you only ever see the back of his head, and you never actually see his face when he's talking until right up until like about 2 minutes into the scene, and it's just cutaways to everybody else. I mean, that kind of smacks to me like they've completely rewritten his dialogue on the fly and just edited in later, and it seemed just a bit bizarre. And then there was also this horrible, horrible moment at the very beginning of the show when, like, she's talking to like the master.
I kept her safe in this college for 12 years. I gave her to you to look after, and you lost her.
Everything's totally out of sync with what he's saying and what is. I mean, that's just bad editing. But the absolute cake take of the episode was this scene. Now, I'm totally on board with, like, the idea, the slow build-up, the tense stuff. I mean, Tony Costa nearly falling down the lift shaft at the beginning, and then they get in, and then it was all build up. And then this happened. And I could talk days about everything wrong with this scene, but I mean, I'm going to keep it really brief. Right, straight up, why does the guy do the Prometheus run, like, away from the gun? He just runs in a straight line. When there's doors on both sides, he could have, like, head or dive to the side or do anything. But I mean, maybe he's an idiot. But then he still manages to get the better of her, like, but then he still kills himself. I mean, and also, she does, like, the worst slappy kung fu ever. I mean, this just looked tragic. I mean, I don't care if you, like, finish with her hands in a funky Tai Chi pose. It doesn't make that look like it hurt. And at the end, like, he has time to get up and slap her and then run away. I mean, he could have grabbed her, choked her, he could have broken her neck, he could have banged her head off the wall, he could have tried to go for the gun, he could have done a million things, but no, the show needed him to sacrifice himself because we don't actually want to get rid of Mrs. Coulter at this point, but we actually need to fill out some kind of thing in the scene to show that he's bad, but they're also noble, but also to drive the impetus of everyone going up north. But this was just bad. I mean, it really actually felt like bad writing, like bits in early Game of Thrones seasons when they were writing something in that clearly wasn't from the books, and it stuck out like a sore thumb because suddenly they managed to go all the way to somewhere else and back in like no time at all, when normally it would take them ages. I mean, that happened quite a few times in the early seasons. Now, this is a bit like that, but it's sloppy and it's been badly done and it seems a little bit dopey. But it also ties into another problem in the show, and that's the demon thing, because it's still unclear how that works, and it's starting to really bug me now. Now, it doesn't entirely make sense, and we know that the demons can't go that far away from them, but Mrs. Coulter's can apparently go quite far. But does that mean that she has a stronger connection or a weaker connection? I mean, does the distance the demons could be, is it vary from person to person? And if so, why does Lyra not know that? And also, we see the Gyptians with birds flying around in the masses one, like wheeling about that cathedral place. So, I mean, surely it depends on it, but it does depend on what your demon is. And when you're shot, even the Gruman man's kestrel one, you think that he would probably be able to hold his own against the monkey one. Because if it doesn't, and if it's basically like if you've got a monkey one, or if you've got one that's a bear or a tiger or whatever, then you're somehow a tougher person and you're always going to win, then that kind of makes mockery of some aspects of the universe, because if you had a big tough demon, that would make you more likely to win in a fight. And so the world would have been dominated by people who had tough demons. And people with like a mouse or insect ones would have been a second class or like a lower caste type of people. Because, I mean, as we saw last week, you can literally just kill them just by grabbing the butterfly and giving it a squeeze. Now, that's not going to work if you've got you're up against somebody who's, demons like a Rottweiler or something like that. And it slightly annoys me because it's that kind of world building that doesn't make sense. And also, while I appreciate the performance, the last thing I'm going to comment on is Ruth Wilson's descent of Mrs. Coulter into some kind of crazy wine mum crossed with psycho ex-girlfriend. It's a little bit tiring and campy. Frankly, the performance seems to be going a little bit too much like Missy from Doctor Who. So yeah, till next time, I've been Ian, and these have been my grumpy opinions.